Good evening. Where's Jepson with his... Someone get a cab for Dan Jepson. Sorry, I've been waiting for months to do that joke. Wow, what a great day and a half. And this is what we do as Indigenous people, is we talk business and then we eat together and connect at a family level. I got to sit beside my brother, John Jack, who's gonna make me look like a bigger jerk as he comes up to share his words later today. But just first round of applause for the catering staff. What a tremendous meal. I want to thank everybody for coming. A lot of times when we go to conferences like this, people are in and out throughout the day, but just the attentive nature of the whole audience is really inspiring to the speakers. And I think the speakers showed that by being authentic. I think they're genuine, and I think they're truthful, and that's what we need to see to really see this reconciliation discussion through. There's got to be a lot more of what we need to say as opposed to what we want to hear. But with that behind us, I would like to introduce again Elder Lolly Good, who's come to start off our evening in a nice way. After the dinner would be done, the drums would usually come out, and people would start singing and just enjoying life a little bit and paying that tribute back to the Creator. So without any further ado, Lolly Good.
Hi-aht. IROC2024. IROC2024. Good evening. It is good to see you all. And what happened to all those long couches? I was going to go have a nap. I have thought things over. When I was leaving today, I had came across some members who were just getting here, so I'm just going to go ahead with my protocol for the ones who did not hear me this morning. Siem na sohwan, siem na sietya, siem na squalaqua, antepet, shaitzelwood, lollygoodtanas juanitamath na squish, tenisan at snanemo, ikrumlo at seashell. Snanemo shi CME mastimo tlashatham mak Huu-ay-aht tamach. Honored elders, friends, family. I was born and raised Snanemo, extended family roots, Seashell. Snanemo Chief Mike Wise and Council invite you all to our sacred lands. While I do this blessing, I ask that you think of others. Sisat siem, haichka atanaquel, thichwam, lelamathat, atakikulus, ikaki, mastimo, haichka atasaltans atanaquel, thichwam, we atslahan atalatames, sisat siem thichwam, atwatolquas atanaquel, itamaxquel, stilatlamste. Creator, thank you for this day. Please look after those who are grieving and for those who are sick. Thank you for the food today. Please bring blessing and medicine to our tables. Creator, please help us all today and every day. Ni-hai. I'd like to thank all those who are being in charge of this event and calling upon me to do the welcoming. I raise my hands to each and every one of you workers involved with this, holding this beautiful event. Hi-aht. For some of you know that I created a song out of the phrase, "It's a really good day," in my language, Hulk-aminum. Not every day is a good day. It isn't. We know that. But you know what? If we can have fun less than 10 minutes, it does something here and here. I have brought and collected over the years hand instruments, and I have 3 bags up front here. Please, I would like you to come forward, grab your own instrument. Do not go back to the table. We're going to line up all along on here, but please grab your own instrument. I do not like them to be shoved into your hands. So please come forward and grab your own instrument and line up all on the front here. Haichka.
Is there a flat spot here? Wow, what a tremendous boost of energy. Lolly, good. Round of applause for Lolly, please. That was definitely the energy I needed. I think it was the energy we could all use after a long day. And I just want to comment on every powerful young First Nations leader has an auntie with an auntie voice who gets things done. If I stood up here and said, come on up and grab a rattle, I don't want to force it on you, we'd still be negotiating and talking. But that auntie tone kicks in, people react, and let's not forget that. Moving along, I was having some fun with John about making me look like a bit of a jackass, but he can do that anytime because he's known me longer than most people in this room. 2009, I think our paths crossed. We were at a Western Forest Product Board of Directors meeting. Robert Dennis was chief at the time, and they had it on Halloween. I got kids. What do you mean you're having a board meeting on the night of Halloween? So I said to Lee Doney, that's a real name drop, eh? Said to Lee Doney, I got to be with my kids till this time. I don't gonna have time to go home and change. He says, well, just bring your costume, just kind of teasing me. So it's at one of the fancy banquet rooms in the Empress in Victoria, high stage. I walked in, saw some bottles of wine I had never recognized before and realized I was in for something. And I walked a little bit farther in, and I happened to be dressed as Fred Flintstone. And the first person whose eyes I made contact was with the other youngest. John and I were the youngest guys by about 35 years in that room. But the world's changed a lot since then. People like this young man and myself, Chief Roberts, Isaiah, we get to decide who comes into some of these rooms now, and that's part of the learning curve. And so I'm really honored to, not only as a friend, but as the chairman of this conference, someone. You know, John's always supported us. Every time we've needed a speaker or to find speakers, John's always been there. And it's my great honor to ask him to come up and give this year's keynote address. John Allen Jack.
Well, good evening, everyone. I will not make Dallas look like a jackass. But I will say it's a bit sobering knowing how long we've known each other now. So that's something that I think I'm trying to take away now. Being who I am. Oh, by the way, my name is John Jack. Uklama Sayachat. Hishtuk Shitla Huu-ay-aht. So my name is John Allen Jack, and I'm the Chief Councillor of Huu-ay-aht. Recently, I was just sworn in July, succeeding Robert. Sitting over there. And first off, what I like to do is just acknowledge and thank the Cinema for hosting us today. And secondly, I'd just like to thank everyone for sticking around, knowing that I am the person holding you from freedom. I'm thankful that you're here tonight. So, in terms of introductions, I am not just the Chief Councillor of Huu-ay-aht, although that is perhaps the most prominent thing that I'm currently doing beyond being a father and a husband. I'm also the chair of the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District, because of the treaty. I am also the chair of the Huu-ay-aht Ventures Limited Partnership, which is the entity that we use to own part of TFL 44, 35% of it, and we're in partnership with Western Forest Products. Hi, Stephen. Hi, Sienna. And since this is the Indigenous Resource Opportunities Conference, I'm also a board member of the First Nations LNG Alliance, which is a bit of an artifact from when my nation was involved in developing an LNG project on Vancouver Island. Say that to yourself again, an LNG project on Vancouver Island. So, Huu-ay-aht is definitely a part of who I am and what I am becoming, but I'm dual heritage. I'm the grandson of a fisherman on my mom's side, on my Huu-ay-aht side. My grandfather is a fisherman. Our family, we're seal hunters. The only good seal is a dead seal. That was one of the things that was just hammered into my head when I was young. No seals. We don't like them. But I'm also the son of a faller. I'm also the son of a man who worked for Macmillan Bloedel. I grew up on the Northwest Bay Division site. Where's Domenico? I grew up not far from where Domenico works. Well, I guess sometimes his real office is just here, and I realized, thinking about all of those types of things, that I was a child of M&B. I exist because of resources. I exist because of forestry and fisheries and all of the things that needed to happen in order for me to live the life that I live now. Of course, my old man, he's a faller, or was. He got into an accident in the mid-90s. Tree's supposed to fall this way, fell this way. And so I say that because he was injured, but he was taken care of by the company, by the union. But April 28th is coming up, and that's the National Day of Mourning for those who are injured and lost on the worksite. And I think that's something that we should all acknowledge, given the fact that I bet you everyone here has been affected by that. And I think this is what we do. We keep going. But my old man, my pop, I call him Pop because we always used to watch Kung Fu, The Legend Continues. And I was in it for the Kung Fu, but my dad was in it because it was a father-son story. And the main character is a cop, and his father is Kwai Chang Caine, but he always called his dad Pop. So I called my dad Pop. But what he used to tell me is that we got you tested as a little kid when you were in elementary school. This is back in the 80s when they thought this was actually true. I was labeled as college material. My dad took that to heart. And so he said, "Son, don't be like me." And at the time, this is before he was injured, so he wasn't crippled or anything. But he didn't want me to follow in his footsteps because he was worried about, his health as a result of the life he lived. So I went to university. So I graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Global Studies. And the only reason I mention that is because I went to school at VIU here in Nanaimo. And I'm actually on the board of governors for VIU for another couple months. I find that being involved in the community really matters, no matter which community I'm a part of. And I find that those connections are really important for creating value. And I think that's really what I'm going to be talking about here today. Creating value by forging connections and maintaining them. And my involvement with the nation was accidental. I was going to university, and my plan was to work for someone like Stephen Hofer and help him move money across borders to avoid paying taxes. That was my plan. And I didn't end up doing that because the nation had been doing treaty work, and part of that treaty work was creating a constitution, the ultimate law by which our nation would be predicated on. And I was not there when the person came door to door to give the questionnaire, so she left the questionnaire behind. So, being the snot-nosed college kid I rewrote some of the questions and answered those instead. So some months later, I get a call, "Hey, we noticed you're a snot-nosed academic. Do you want to join the committee?" And I did. And suddenly a whole new life was opened up for me. I learned things that made me want to know more. And I started to grow those connections that exist. I'm not the type who believes in following your dreams. I believe you build your dreams as you involve yourselves in the things around you. So the more you get involved in community, the more you get involved in partnership, the more you get involved in understanding those around you, the better off you end up being, not just as a person, but honestly speaking in terms of economics and your own personal finances. The more connections you have, the better off you are. It's weird how that fits in with the Huu-ay-aht First Nations. We're located on the west coast of Vancouver Island, near Bamfield. We're part of the Monmouth Treaty, but that's just the legal and political aspect of it. Culturally, we're Nuchanoth. We're the middle of the west coast of Vancouver Island. We have a treaty. Not every nation in Nuchanoth has a treaty. Not every nation on Vancouver Island does, but more will in the future. And I think it's important to note that momentum as time goes by. The effective date of the treaty was in 2011, but I was involved in the nation by about 2007, 2008, being the snot-nosed kid I am. And I found that we were doing things in a way that made a lot of sense to me, given the background that I had in economics, political science, international relations, all that kind of stuff. Because it really fit my understanding of how economics works. I became, in my time, exposed to it through Robert and through Angela Wesley and others, something called the Harvard Project for American Indian Economic Development. And it said, and it stated, and this is Dr. Stephen Cornell, I think he's with the University of Arizona now, that Indigenous success in business starts with good and stable governance that is culturally and geographically compatible with the communities that exist now. First and foremost. And guess what the nation was doing while I was going to university? Doing just that. So when you create those foundations for economic development, for success, for not only your nation, but for your people, you find that there's a missing piece. And that's what I'm really here to talk about, and that's the connections. The more connections you create, the more opportunities you create for working together. And once we got into treaty, we started doing that over and over and over again. That's why I'm the chair of the regional district right now. As exciting as local government is, and Dirk can attest to that. He's taken so many photos of local government conventions here. Actually, it's pretty fun. But we realized very early on that getting involved and reforging those relationships were always so much more lucrative in terms of finding opportunities, finding real chances for creating value. That was very, very, very important. So local government. And through local government, we were introduced to the Port Alberni Port Authority. We got involved with them. And through the Port Authority, we were introduced to Steelhead LNG. And then suddenly 5 or 6 years of my life was centered around LNG and everything around it. But always, as a part of what we were doing, we were always focused on economic development as a central aspect of what it is we do as a nation, because economic development is really the answer for a lot of the questions that go unanswered when you think about Indigenous communities in Canada and in British Columbia. Because truly, we cannot rely on the Crown, on British Columbia and Canada to help solve all of the resourcing and capacity issues that we have in our communities. What are the answers? Well, as a treaty nation, we have a lot more opportunity because we have a lot more self-government and we have more rights and title, and they're more certain. We got into business because we have to get into business to make the ends meet. Our goal is for our citizens to catch up and keep up with everyone else in British Columbia and Canada. Our goal is to create a community that our people are proud of and choose to live in. Right now, 85% of our citizens live away from home. A little less than that now. We're making some progress. Our goal is for half of our people by the 2030s to choose to live in our community, to choose to live in our territory, and everything that that means. I was saying to someone, and I can't remember who, but Gary was there, we need to build 12 houses a year for 10, 15 years in order to even do that. And we're a bit behind, but we're looking for solutions. And by the way, we're looking for solutions, so totally hit me up tomorrow. But what I found is that it's not just enough to want to be involved in business. We want to participate, but we want to be in meaningfully. Back in 2015, I wrote an article for the Vancouver Sun, and I took that whole idea of the West wants in. Well, First Nations want in, but we want in meaningfully. And the reason why that was important is because we knew that we could bring value to the table that didn't exist previously in various ways. The ways we understood our community, understood the land, understood the resources, but also our mere presence has an impact on confidence. And I think that's the second thing that's very important. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It also was a process by which we understood more fully how the economy works. how business works. And while I will never claim to be a Stephen Hofer or a Shauna or Mackenzie, I will say that one thing that we can demonstrate is that we understand that the economy is much more sophisticated than we previously believed. And more specifically, that it's not just a local economy that we should be worried about. It's not just a regional economy that we should just be worried about. Not the province, not the national economy. It's that the fact that we're competing in a globalized economy, and that will probably still be the case for many years to come, regardless of whether or not Biden or Trump are elected. There will be international relations and international trade, and those are the things that we have to take into account. In forestry specifically, we're not competing with each other here. We're competing with Finland and Russia and other places in Europe and so on and so forth, to say nothing of the United States and softwood. I can probably talk a lot about softwood, and I don't want to. I don't think any of you want me to either, because it's all the same. Plus, Brad would be better from Toco for that. But understanding the economy, understanding the sector, the regime that the province has put in place, these things are all really important. Understanding the players is very important too, how and why, and the types of decisions you need to make in order to make money, in order to help your shareholders, but also your workers make a living. Understanding value chains, business models, deal-making, finance, legal aspects, trade aspects, governance. Governance matters, and I think that's something that we can bring value towards as Indigenous communities. But what about us? So Indigenous communities are vastly different, but one thing that is completely true, and I say this to every local government group that I speak to, Indigenous communities have been marching onward with good momentum on creating their own rights and title and self-government, that over the next 50 years, things will change completely for all of you, you being local governments. And the reason why is because of Sparrow and Dogamook and Garen and all of these court cases that have established the fact that we are here, we have rights, and they exist in some way, shape, and form that is radically different than the kind of atomized free market aspect of the world we live in today. And I think that interaction between that individualistic market-based approach with a collective long-term thinking approach is also something we need to contemplate how that we act that out here. Because that, I think, is the root of the value we will create together and share in the future. So Indigenous communities have different geographies, different demographics. Our culture, our government structures, our economics are different. Many communities aren't just undeveloped. It's not undeveloped land. That makes it seem like it's untouched. It's not. It's underdeveloped. It's actually been handled in a way that makes the land less productive because it's not informed by the ways the land should have been handled in the first place. And science is just now catching up to that fact. Things that our ancestors have known for thousands of years. It's important that when we demonstrate our understanding of how it works in the business world, economically and in trade and business, that we create those opportunities for everyone to understand where Indigenous communities come from. And I'm totally not going to do it in 3 minutes, but thank you for the timer. How are you going to understand the communities around you? Now, the thing is, normally I speak more remedially because I speak to local governments who have no idea what they're doing. However, in this group, with resource-based companies, resource-based businesses, honestly speaking, in British Columbia and probably in the prairies, you guys are at the forefront of reconciliation. You are. You have been for so long, ever since those court cases. But you have been. And that's the attitude we need. Moving forward together and acknowledging the fact that no one's going anywhere. We have to work together in order to create that value. And I see that happening at places like this, which is why what Dallas does is so important. Because you create those spaces where it feels like I'm coming home every time I come to this conference. It's different when you go to a First Nations Leadership Council or Union of BC Municipalities. Here, we're all focused on the same thing. We're all focused on creating value and sharing in it for mutual benefit. And the way in which we go about doing that is the discussion we need to continually have over time. And it's going to be different for each community. But it's starting now, and it's going forward in a good way. We have 3 core principles at Huu-ay-aht, and I think they can help inform the way in which we can go ahead and create value together. First of which is Izak. It technically means respect or greater respect, but it's not just like being respectful. It's publicly demonstrating respect and confidence between 2 individuals, because it has its root in an oral culture. When our hereditary leaders would meet with other tribes or other families, they would have to stand up in front of all of their people and show we're connected, we're related, we have these connections and responsibilities to each other. These are the histories that we have together. These are the rights, privileges, and access we have and share. And we need these things from you now. What do you say? And then the other leaders talk to each other and demonstrate that back, because citizens or our people needed to see it, because we didn't have written treaties. So if one tribe, if my tribe, agrees for a mutual defense pact, and it just isn't relevant until 30 years later when I'm gone, and that 17-year-old kid, or where's the kid? There's a kid here. And that kid's the only one who was there to remember the deal. That's really important. Well, yeah, that's all well and good. That's good history, John. How does that matter? Well, it matters because that expectation is a cultural, historic expectation. It's something that informs the expectations of my citizens, of my people, and very likely the citizens of very many other communities in BC and Canada. That governance was done by the light of the big house fire, that everyone could see what was being done. Yeah, I'm not stopping. It's glowing red. I'm sorry. Okay, thumbs up. But they governed by the light of the big house fire, which means that people expected to see kind of depictions of respect, depictions of confidence in one another. And I think that's well informed by the media environment we have today. I don't need to tell you how important confidence is in the economy, because when it's gone, oh man, it's bad. I think what we need to do, though, is understand that it's not about how much respect you have. It's about how much you can give in that network of demonstrating respect to one another. That's how you create an environment of confidence in one another. The more you interact, the more you show that you are respectful of who it is and why it is, or who it is you're talking to and why you're there to talk, the more instances that will be reciprocated back in public. And those instances are super important in today's day and age. It's very parallel with how things were before contact, actually. It's very interesting. But our next core principle is the concept of hishuk masawak. It means that everything is one. It's the idea that everything is connected in that Carl Sagan way, not in the Yoda way. That the human world, the natural world, and if you go for it, the supernatural world, they're all connected. They have interconnected, interdependent, and reciprocal relationships. And that it's important for us to demonstrate to ourselves and amongst one another that we don't have to necessarily understand all of that or comprehend all of it, but we have to respect it. That there is inherent complexity in many of the systems that exist, and we have to tread carefully. And I think we can do that, especially given the state of science today, how all of those things can impact things. What's important, and I think gets forgotten, is that there are disruptions in the economy when it comes to forestry, and they have direct impacts on the daycare outcomes for my citizens. We forget about those things. That When Indigenous communities get involved in business, they're not doing it to give money to some shareholder in Antwerp or wherever. They're getting revenue to pay for infrastructure, programs and services, investing in the local economy. Indigenous communities spend money locally for the most part. We're not putting our money away in New York or London. We're putting it away in local Canadian banks and investing in things locally. Those are the impacts that we need to demonstrate more often, because you do it too. We can do it more together, and suddenly that creates an environment of confidence, which is really important in the economy. And lastly is the concept of Huu-ay-aht. So it's a verb. It means taken care of. There's two meanings to it, and the first of which I can't really get into because it's the secret ways and means of our hereditary leaders, how they make decisions, why they make decisions, and how they govern as hereditary leaders. That's kind of hidden away from people like me. I'm just a commoner. That's fine. That's how it works. It has worked for thousands of years. But there's another way that we apply Huu-ay-aht, and that's the idea, and it's been repeated in other ways too across the nation. It's taking into account the needs of present and future generations in all the decisions you make moving forward. It seems kind of obvious now, but this has existed for thousands of years for us. We are trying to think generations ahead. So it doesn't do well just to think of the next quarter or the next fiscal year, or for me, the next term of office. We have to think in terms of generations. But at least in terms of forestry and even energy, there are projections that go forward hundreds of years now. That's a standard in our industry. How many people actually know that? How many people actually appreciate and remember that when these types of things come up? We need to demonstrate publicly what it is we know and how we know it in terms of how we relate to each other, because there are so many people who have heard that and it's just passed through their ears. They will remember if we demonstrate it in terms of it being a relationship aspect. We acknowledge that these things have been done well, because they have. But what we need, I think, is this understanding that we need to demonstrate that we're thinking less about the quarter or the fiscal year and more in terms of those future considerations. So I recently went on a trade mission to Japan with Minister Ralston. There are a bunch of people who are here who were there. And one thing that always strikes out, it was like my 6th time in Japan. One thing that always sticks out to me in terms of business and deals with Japanese folks is that they're always thinking about stability, reliability, first and foremost. They want the good stuff too. I mean, that's obvious. But I think that informs a lot of the way that Indigenous communities think about how business deals should be structured, because we're in it forever. My people want to know that their great-grandchildren are going to have the same resource opportunities that they do today. So we need to manage for that sort of thing. And luckily we are. We need to demonstrate that we're doing it right. So a lot of discussions around economic development and Indigenous communities and Indigenous rights and title and how that interacts with the province and the federal government and business is always a conversation around certainty, around what will happen and could happen. And that's why I think what we need to really talk about is taking away from that passive understanding of how things can happen and realize that we should be working together to create confidence by demonstrating good relationship building and good activities together. You're already doing that for the most part, but we need to show people that we're doing it so that people who don't know anything can go, actually, it's pretty good. I see that online sometimes. You actually see some people chiming in on those flame wars online. They go, actually, BC's doing pretty good if you actually look at it from this framework. Now, for the most part, we were like, no, that's crazy. That's not real. That just means we need to repeat it and show it more. And I think it's by doing things like this that we achieve that. So recently, we've all kind of been affected by the old growth conversation, the report from Mr. Gorley and Merkel, and how that informed the province moving forward, and how scary that is. There's concerns, and I think some of those concerns are valid, but I think the way in which my chief counselor at the time, Robert Dennis, reacted to it was not to react to it, but to respond positively, proactively, and go, those are valid concerns. We agree, but we want to take some time to show you that we think we can manage the land better. And we're in the process of showing that we are going to do just that. Huu-ay-aht expertise informs the sustainability and acceptability of forestry and other operations in our territory. We decide for all we need to do. And that's really important, because for a lot of the time, the narrative is that you have to be the right kind of Indian. Well, the right kind of Indian is what we decide, not what you decide. And guess what? The work has been done. People here are doing the work every day. And that creates a degree of confidence in my heart to keep moving forward in a good way. And that's good. We can demonstrate to each other that I have confidence in you, and you have confidence in us. We need to demonstrate that to each other, but everyone out there needs to see it too. It's the only way this is going to work. It's the only way we're going to be able to move forward together and create that value that we all need for my community to catch up and keep up, and for Canada and BC to keep moving forward in the way that it is. Funnily enough, I think what's important is to show in some instances that our alignment comes from our own self-determination. When we got into treaty and started making decisions for ourselves, we started realizing early on that a lot of the interests that we had paralleled the conversations and interests that you have in other communities and in other business ventures. I so understand the concerns of any forestry operation here today, given what I know about forestry and what we've tried to do. And I understand, thank you, and I understand the frustrations that can be had in dealing with the BC government's stumpage people. But I think what we don't realize, and this is something that Robert and Dallas and others have already said to me privately, I don't think the province really understands just how aligned Indigenous communities are when it comes to forestry and stumpage and what it is we are trying to do. We're heavily invested in forestry, and we're in it for the right reasons, because we're committed to sustainability, but we're also committed to making a living for our people and providing services and infrastructure that are necessary for us to catch up and keep up. I haven't even drank this yet, but thank you. But one thing that I found particularly inspiring, and you're going to pardon my language, hopefully. So I was having a conversation probably 10 years ago with Huu-ay-aht, Sean Atleo. Was the national chief for all of Canada's AFN. And he said, we need to own shit and run shit if we're going to really stay present and relevant. And he was really, really correct when it came to that. It wasn't just enough to have a say in the regulations. It wasn't enough to kind of say, well, no, this is our land and you can't do anything with it. It wasn't enough. We had to own it. We had to run it. We had to understand what it was like to own it and run it and have expectations and people who relied on getting a paycheck. But how we create value is going to be different. It's more long-sighted, I think, but inherently more sustainable, which provides for a long-term value proposition. We're trying to demonstrate our confidence in the industry with concrete actions. We partnered with Western Forest Products on acquiring, at the time, I think 8% of TFL 44. Now, it wasn't revolutionary. There were other nations who got there way before we did. But then we realized at a certain point, hey, this is kind of relevant. We increased our share of TFL 44 to 35%. because that just so happens to be the percentage of TFL 44 that fell within our traditional territory. And in working together with Western Forest Products and in working together with Mosaic and other operators out there, we understood just how tenuous it was at times. Started to see, oh hey, those decisions that they make in Victoria are really relevant to whether or not we can actually make a living. Hey, we're pretty aligned on what's going on here. Hey, being on the land really makes a difference. And so we realized that working together and understanding that forestry is a global market where the competition is Finland and Germany and Russia, not the rest of Canada or some other company in BC, is really important. And I hope, the government is understanding that fact as well. Hopefully they can help enable us to work together and create value and share in that value, because if we share in value that is created, it's not coming out of the taxpayers' coffers. I mean, that's obvious, but I think it's something we need to continually relate to one another. Partnerships create value because Indigenous communities can help create confidence and local know-how. Those things are very valuable in today's environment. I think that really speaks to some of the real value that can be created in working together. And I think those demonstrations early on with what the Nanwakolas is doing and other First Nations across BC has given us the inspiration to work together. So tomorrow we'll be talking about, or I'm on a panel, where we'll be talking about something called ISCM Investments. More than 20 nations working together, principally in forestry, because that's kind of what we know. Demonstrating our confidence in an industry that needs as much confidence as it can get. We got skin in the game. We care about the outcomes. We want to be involved in a good way. Now, I don't know what we're going to do exactly with ISCM Investments, but coming together and choosing to do so is really important and is notable. And you're seeing that across the country. Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta. Alberta was there way before us, I think, just because of energy. Good examples of working together. I guess I'll just stop and kind of reiterate that confidence must be demonstrated, and I think that's something we need to do. And I think I have confidence because I've seen when it's done, because I'm the grandson of a fisherman, I'm the son of a faller, but I'm also the father of 2 girls and a boy. And that same stability that raised me, that same resilient and confident industry that helped prop up and continually kept the province going is something I want to keep going, because it may be something that my daughters and my son rely on as well. So if we're to catch up and keep up, we need the impetus to communicate and to understand each other, to challenge one another, but to do so in a good way, to do so in a way that builds that understanding and that value proposition of working together. I think we understand what that is. I guess I see the path ahead not as one that's one of scarcity innately. And you can see people panic every once in a while. Everyone wants to work together to create value, but in the back of our heads, we're scared that it's a zero-sum game. And I think ultimately it is, because it's forestry or energy or mining, but there are decisions that we can make now within the game of economics to continually make value into the future. If the Saudis can do it, if Norway can do it, we can do it. And not just in forestry, it's just what we focus on at Huu-ay-aht. There are conversations about aquaculture and energy, hopefully, and other things that we want to be involved in, because Indigenous voices around the table will make things easier, but more importantly, it will create confidence. And that's what we need. We need people who don't know anything to start knowing things. And I think it would be great, even excellent, if we can do that. And the value that I bring is hopefully being able to bring this message as far and wide as I can. But the value that you can bring is the work that you can do with all of the prospective partners that you may create and find in the future in places like this. because that's the work that we need to do together, because that's the only way we're really going to move this whole sector forward in a way that isn't riven by stupid politics and the way the media depicts everything. We're not a sideshow. We're not entertainment. These are real people's lives. And you're helping with that. Every time you meet, every time you sit down to do that boring accounting work or get some random chief councillor to sign documents, that you're really helping create lasting value for all of us. And it's really important. I just want to show my appreciation for all of you who have been here today and will be here tomorrow and have sat through 38 minutes and 30 seconds of me talking, knowing that it's probably 7:30 or almost 8 o'clock. And my deepest appreciation for all of you working together. It's not always going to be easy, but I think it's always going to be worthwhile. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Chief Councillor John Jack, for that. I have a quick speaker gift to give you. We'll take a quick photo, and then I'll get through the last few notes for the evening.
Oh, photo?
Yeah, Dallas is going to come up.
I see a few of these in the crowd today, and I just want to present this one personally. We'll get you one that fits, but this, here, hold this up, pal. This is from my shameless plug of Res Dog Walkers, our podcast that we created, but people like Chief John Allen Jack, Isaiah Robinson, Chris Roberts, those of us who have decided that we're not going to fit into the peg that people want us to fit in going forward. Chief John Allen Jack was one of the inspirations behind actually making Res Dog Walkers a reality, so it's my honor to present this to you, brother.
Thanks.
Just one quick note of comment. Some of you have heard the podcast. What a great day. We named Res Dog Walkers what it is because someone who is against us taking the steering wheel of self-determination, driving the bus, as our honored elder, Chief Robert Dennis, former Chief Robert Dennis said, some of those in the activist community decided that we should diversify our economy by walking dogs. And those of us who spent any time on a res, good luck with that. So the Res Dog Walkers were born, and we're gonna howl till we're finished. Howl! Good night, everybody. We'll see you in the morning.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Just a couple of quick housekeeping notes before we end the evening. We have a networking break tomorrow morning starting at 8 a.m., sponsored by Capacity Forest Management. We encourage you all to show up. There will be coffee and snacks. Last call at the bar was 7:30, so I'm sorry. I think you've all missed that, but we have the networking room open until 8 o'clock. Other than that, everybody have a great evening. Please get home safe, and we look forward to seeing you first thing tomorrow morning.